leaders that are my guest here today, and I'll start with introducing Silvia with a very warm welcome. So who's
Thank
Silvia? Silvia is based on the Gold Coast. We already said that, but originally from Argentina. Now she's the founder of the About My Brain Institute. She's a neurocoach, a TEDx speaker, a master facilitator, and a filmmaker. Silvia's purpose is to transform current leadership practices in order to create brain-friendly leaders who are more conscious, ethical, compassionate, creative, and intuitive, and who can lead us into the 21st century. Yes. She has also written 2 books, with the latest being Brain-Friendly Leadership and The 9 Habits of a Future Fit Mind. So very warm welcome, Silvia.
Thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure to share the stage with you and Samantha. And trust, such an important topic for everybody.
Yes, so important. Yeah. And I actually, while I'm doing technology as well, can just remove the slide. So we are on screen. And next, I'd like to introduce my second guest, Samantha Dzabic. And Sam is, again, based in Sydney, but was born in the Netherlands, then grew up in Croatia, UK, and the US. As an organizational psychologist and executive coach, Sam held many leadership roles in large enterprise companies, which saw her working across the world, Europe, Asia, US, and since 2000, you're calling Australia your home, which is lovely. Yeah. And lately, her research and interest lies in the areas of emotional intelligence, so very much closely related to trust. And her new passion is also a project in breaking the ageism in the workplace.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. What an introduction. Thanks, Birthe.
And welcome everyone here from the world stage. And we've got Brazil here as well. Amazing. Now, on the topic of trust, let's dive right in because this session will be too short, I know. I want to start with some statistics and talking about why trust is actually a good idea for business. Because we often talk about it, but then it's easier said than done. So this is from a Harvard Business Review article. Compared with people at low trust companies, people at high trust companies report 75% less stress, 106% more energy at work. Can you imagine that? More energy at work, 50% higher productivity, fewer sick days, more engagement, more satisfaction, and less burnout.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is a fabulous idea, right? And this is well researched. So it's a very good business sense. And just to make it a little bit more tangible and also look at the Oxford Dictionary, let's look at what trust actually is. And I'll come to Silvia in a moment.
Yeah.
So the dictionary says to believe that somebody is good, honest, sincere, etc., and that they will do what you expect of them or do the right thing. To believe that something is true or correct. You can trust me or that I won't tell anyone. So that's kind of the idea of trust. And if it's in the workplace, it's a very, very good thing for business. You're more competitive, more innovative, more creative. So Silvia, I'd like to start with you.
Yes.
It's such a big concept. How would you know? So what is trust in your words? And how would you know if trust is present or absent in the workplace?
Okay, so such interesting question. And one of the things that comes to mind is this image that you have in there about the basketballer. Many years ago, I worked with a team of basketballers here in Sydney, and one of the guys explained to me that when they pass the ball to their mate, they don't even look at them. They know they will be there for them for that pass. And I found that I saw them play, and I found that in sports, people seem to get what trust is, more than in the workplace. Sometimes I have this sense that, you can drop dead and people will continue walking because for some reason, the focus is on getting the job done and getting the outcomes and getting the task, and very little time is dedicated to build a relationship with other people. And obviously now we see how this is playing out with people still working in remote locations or hybrid and not wanting to come back to the office, because obviously there is an advantage to that. We can do some of our well-being activities without wasting time in transport. But on the other side, on the other hand, our relationships, the sense of collaboration and belonging is suffering significantly.
These days, it's to and fro, isn't it? It's like, like in basketball, knowing where is the other person, what is the other person doing. And normally in the workplace, we would see that, we could hear it, we could see the, overhear conversations or know if someone is even in the office or not.
Yes.
So
we say trust is so precious, and yet it's an everyday thing. You trust that, whatever you buy with your money will be what you wanted to buy with your money. You trust a person to marry them. You trust a doctor to give you an advice. So it's an ever-present thing in our lives that without it, the whole society would come to a halt. Yeah, because without trust, you can't actually function in the world.
Yeah, it's the glue that makes us stick or not. And if you think about a very real example, you drive in the highway, your car stops, you're on the side of the road, and you call a friend. The good friend will do whatever it takes to come and pick you up and help you. The not so good friend, they say, I'm busy, or I can't do it, or I can't make it now. So it's that sense that we have that people will have our backs if something happens to us.
That's exactly
So would
right.
you say, staying with the analogy of basketball or sports here, would you agree that trust is something that we can look at like a muscle, where it has to be consistently fed? Other people use the concept of the trust jar, where we consistently have to give little signs that I'm trustworthy or you can trust me. Is that where training comes in, and how can we?
I think it has to do with your authenticity as well. Maybe you don't have to do things. You just have to be the best version of yourself, even though it sounds cliche. If you don't lie, if you're authentic, if you show yourself in the same way in every aspect of your life, people will gravitate towards you because they can see that there's coherence in your persona. And I'm sure that as a psychologist, Samantha can add to this.
Well, so persona, it's funny. So we have three faces that we show to the world. We have the persona, which is in Jungian terms, Carl Gustav Jung, he said, we all have a mask that we wear outside. Persona is something that we show publicly to the world, who we are. So trust shows up in the persona with our consistency, with our reliability on how we interact with the world. Do we lie? Do we gossip? Do we do things that we say that we would do? Then we have our private life, where a trust is built on a different set of relationships with your partner, with your children, and then you have your secret life, of course. Now, if all these three faces that we have are congruent, that gives us the authenticity and the ability to build trust within and without. Yeah, because you have to also trust yourself. When you are procrastinating, for example, in the work, what you're doing is you're not really trusting yourself that you can do anything. So trust starts with you as an individual. Trust
I like to segment into this. This is one of the three components we discussed today will be trust in self, trust, how to build trust in teams, and how to be a trustworthy leader. So
if you want, sorry, Birthe, I'm cutting you off.
I know, we're all very chatty people. Continue on with where you were at the moment, but trust in self is such a big component of it. And how can we build more trust in us?
Well, so you have to always start with yourself. So if you're lying to yourself in any way, shape, or form, you cannot authentically build trust with anybody else. So if you continuously, for example, you say, "Oh, I'll start my diet tomorrow. I'll start my diet," or you're continuously doing something that you know is wrong, and your friends keep telling you it's wrong, and you keep telling them, "Yes, I will change," and you never change. So that does not help you to build trust in your own ability that you can do something, that you can change something, but it doesn't give you the ability to build trust with others, because your brain is forever looking. It's like a heat-seeking missile. It's forever looking whether you are a friend or foe. Yeah. So if you're not providing enough of trustworthy information in your relationships, then people may behave as if they trust you, but it will not be authentic. It will not be real. The main component will not be there. But how we form trusting habits, it actually happens in our childhood. So that happens between the ages of 6 or 12, where the child understands that it's not part of the mother, when you actually start individuating. Yeah, from 6 to 12 is when we sort of start forming the trust relationship with ourselves and others. But it depends very much on your primary carer, on whether your primary carer was consistent in their care of you as a child, whether you understood that you can trust and rely on your mother to feed you, to change you, to do things that you need to survive. So it's very much a survival piece, the trust piece. Without that, you won't survive. And then if you grow up without that, and we see that in behavioral studies all the time, when people did not have enough support, enough love, enough, when they didn't know where the next meal is coming from. Societies that are very poor, that are living in the third world countries, will have a very low levels of trust in anything to each other, but also at the workplace.
That's interesting. That is obviously something where, if I was a leader in the workplace, I'd say, well, I have no control over my team, and how did they grow up? And that's kind of, it doesn't feel like my first responsibility, even though I know that, we can build environments where people can thrive. Where would you go to start building your own trust?
Yeah, but a team leader, if they had upbringing where their trust was low with their primary caregiver, and they grew up without trusting others, they can never become great leaders, because they will not be able to trust people who they're leading. Huh? So for a team to work, the leader has to be secure in their own attachment from their childhood. They have to be secure very much in that they can trust, that they have the ability to trust. Without that, then they cannot actually lead the team and provide a safe environment. It will be hard for the leader
to even trust others.
Yeah. You can't create
I actually like to jump that. I like to bring that question, now that we talk about leadership already, I like to move over to Silvia, because this is your forte, right? How to build leaders that are authentic. You already mentioned that, and when we reach our own authenticity, we can be the best version of ourselves. How does it work, and what does neuroscience connect? How does that connect?
Okay, there's two aspects. One, I just want to share this story of many years ago when I used to work for a bank, and one of the leaders, it was a CIO, who asked me to do a focus group because he could feel that his team wasn't happy with him, but he wasn't sure of why. And of course, leaders that are not able to ask the question directly, that's the first indication that they don't trust themselves, because they don't want to hear what people have to say, so they need to hire a consultant to do the work for them. So I went in, and he was a surfer, and one of his team members was a surfer too, and they had a very
like riding the waves in Australia, right? Nice.
Yes, that's right. Yes, and they had this good friendship, because they had something in common, which also is the basis of building a trusting relationship. Just look for the commonalities, because that makes it easier. So I went in, had a chat with his team members. There were 8 other people, And I asked them, tell me some of the positives, the negatives. And the first thing, and the one thing that they said mainly, and they kept repeating, was that the boss was always taking this other friend or this other colleague for lunch to Darling Harbour. And, not every day, of course, but, from time to time. But he would never take them. And I said, okay, that's fine. Point taken. And what else? I said, no, that's it. We are really upset at him that he never invites us or talks to us in the same way that he talks to this other person. So we're talking about, 40, 50-year-old men, grown-up men, who disliked the favoritism that this leader was demonstrating. And the other person, when I spoke to him, he just couldn't believe that this was the reason why there wasn't enough trust, and he felt awkward around them. So sometimes in terms of leadership, we have to really identify, it could be, these fine traits of a leadership that we are not able to pick up. And that's why we use 360 assessments, because people don't tell you the truth in your face because they are fearful of being fired. And doing this exercise, if you're in a leadership position, of getting feedback from other people is essential, because you need to know. And the more you go up the ladder, the less self-aware you become, because people tend to say yes to you rather than say no, because obviously they want to please you. And you lose contact with reality. And that's one of the things that can affect your predisposition towards being a trustworthy person, or having this discomfort that, people are going to trust you back.
Yeah.
So there are many things to talk about this topic, but this is what's coming to mind at the moment.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit more about the neuroscience behind trust?
Yes. So one of the things that, we have learned from the neuroscience fields, and for people who are listening and they are aware about how neuroscience plays a role in the development of leaders and organizational excellence, there are many chemicals that flood our brains and bodies at any moment in time, all the time. And one of the most important ones when it comes to trust is the hormone called oxytocin. It's this peptide. And oxytocin makes us want to be together. And it starts in our bodies when we are nursing a child, or it gets produced in men as well. Of course, it's not just women. And when we talk to each other, when we have good conversations, when we compliment people, when we smile, we are eliciting oxytocin within our bodies and the bodies of other people. So oxytocin is also called the love hormone or the trust hormone. And if we have too much stress in the workplace and we have high levels of cortisol, it will affect the levels of oxytocin that gets produced. So one of the first things you can do is to watch your stress levels. If you're too stressed, go for a walk, cool down, and then come back and try to connect with the other person in a genuine and in an authentic way. Because otherwise, if we keep going with these virtual interactions and we never interact with people fully, we are not producing enough oxytocin to build this relationship of trust that we are looking for.
So that sounds like a real vicious cycle. So I need oxytocin in order to connect with other people. But then once stress kicks in, for whatever reason, stress at work, stress at home, stress for finances, we have COVID, everything else is happening. What you're saying is the stress will reduce the oxytocin. So,
yes.
And when we have a reduction of oxytocin, all we need is actually connecting with people, but we can't because the oxytocin level is so low. So how about the idea of, can you buy that on the shelf? Can I spray it in rooms? Can I spray it in meeting rooms?
Yeah. We would be very wealthy if we could bottle and sell it. Yeah.
There were some experiments in the US where they spray a room with oxytocin before people walked in, and they observed their interactions, with each other in a team meeting situation, and see if people tended to bond more than not. But there's also that if it's too much oxytocin, it could also lead to aggression. So there's a bit of, a paradoxical understanding of how oxytocin works. So I don't think we can go and spray that easily without understanding what we are doing. But one anecdote that I can share is I met once Dr. Kenneth Stoller. He wrote a book called Oxytocin, and he was studying oxytocin in depth. And what happened is his 16-year-old son got run over by a train, and his grief was so immense that he wasn't able to recover. Like he could not recover at all. And after a month of suffering deeply, because he was studying oxytocin and its benefits, he started to take some oxytocin sublingual, some drops. And he says that in 15 days after doing that, he was feeling like he could breathe. And oxytocin had really kicked in his system and had changed a little bit his response to this stress caused by the grief. So we are, at the end of the day, I don't like to call it this way, but we are chemical machines with lots of things happening in our brains and bodies all the time. And if we read a little bit, and if we understand the importance of these chemicals and what they do to us, we can regulate. So when we talk about emotional intelligence and regulating emotions, for example, it's so important to understand the chemistry behind emotions so we can do something about it, because this is the idea. We have a chat on trust, but then we have to do something about it. Otherwise, we keep, it's almost like we are blind in this space of the workplace where there's a lot of stress. And if we don't know how to use the brain and the body properly, then we are going to be suffering rather than enjoying the task or what we need to do.
Yeah, absolutely. That is that's a difficult thing, and that's what I hear all the time. And I like to believe in the good, and I think there's a lot of leaders out there that have the best intentions. They want to do good. You know, they don't want to harm on purpose, but literally finding the time to make connections. As you said, literally, you mentioned before, I've written it down, that building something where we have something in common, for example, having a regular touch base within the team where we connect as humans and not just as, IT developers or marketing managers, but as humans where we get to know each other better and find that maybe we have more in common than we might be different.
Yes.
Well, you heard of the trust equation, yes?
You tell me more.
So there was a wonderful book written called First Among Equals. It was written for people who are running professional services businesses. This was quite a few years ago. And that's when I came across this trust equation. It says that trust equals your credibility, meaning you need to know what it is that you do in your area of expertise. You need to know, to give people that sense that you truly stand behind what you're talking about. Like Silvia is a neuroscientist, you are a team expert, I'm a psychologist, and I have this diploma, that. So there is evidence-based thing.
So that's the credibility. That's number
one. Plus, there is the accountability. Now, accountability is about consistency, following through, following up, doing what you said that you would do consistently. I mean, we all make mistakes from time to time, but the mass of accountability is that it's over time, you're consistently doing what you said that you would do. So accountability. The third one, they're calling intimacy. I'm calling it rapport and authenticity. So credibility plus accountability plus intimacy, meaning you build rapport with people, not because you want something from them, but because you're genuinely interested in people. Plus, you are being your authentic self. You're bringing your authentic self to this interaction. Yeah. And that all is divided by the amount of self-interest that is driving the interaction. So if you are only coming to my desk when you need something, or if you're calling yourself my friend, but you're only calling me when you need something from me, you're not calling me to check in on me, you're not interested about my life, about my children, about relationship, then my trust in you, regardless of whether you are credible, whether you are accountable, and whether you know a few things about me, but that amount of self-interest will determine my level of trust in you. So I think that's always such a good equation. Leaders in the workplace, when they lose trust from their people, it's one of these things that is wobbly. Most of the time, it's authenticity piece and a self-interest piece, in my view.
So the trust equation, yes, and that's a lot, and a lot to think about, right? And then again, I think looking at personality types.
And personality.
I know that some people are born, they find it easier to trust than others, and then other people are more they question more, and they want research and they want data before they believe anything. So do you think that trust equation would still equate to both kind of people?
Regardless of your personality type, we all have extrasensory perception when it comes to knowing whether to trust a person or not. Now, frequently that gets overridden sometimes. For example, I'm a female, it's midnight, I want to go into an elevator stops and there is man in the elevator. Do I go into that elevator? Do I trust myself to know to make the right decision? Or do I kind of say, no, thank you, and run the opposite way? So, we all have the extrasensory perception when it comes to trusting or not trusting. Again, depending on how you grew up, your attachment, the environment that you came from, your experiences through life, that will also determine the level of trust that you have in people. If you've been in a workplace where you've been working for 5 years, you continuously get shut down by your boss, your confidence gets so eroded. Even if you go into the most wonderful workplace in the world, heaven on earth, you will have difficulty trusting. Yeah. So it's also, the environment, the consistency, the exposure to whatever environment you experience. And, working in an environment where your boss is untrustworthy, that does damage to people. That's the toxic workplace I frequently talk about. And being untrustworthy shows up in the workplace as talking behind your employees' back to other employees, canceling the meetings that you have with your employees because they're not really important. You are important to me. So they say all the right words.
I actually
do the action.
I like to use that example as a question to the audience for everyone watching here, the ones that are live. I'd love to hear some of your stories, quick stories in the chat. What to you would be a sign where there is trust within the workplace or in your team? What behaviors would you see where there's trust in the workplace? What behaviors would you see? Or vice versa, what behaviors would you see that make you go, all right?
I have one.
Right, Silvia. While we're waiting on the chat, I think there's a bit delayed. I listen to Silvia. You go ahead.
Yeah. When you see that people are comfortable in disclosing something that they wouldn't tell other people outside, it means that there is trust in a team, for example. The same thing happens in a relationship. You could have the best relationship or the worst relationship, but if you are still able to tell each other the things you don't tell someone else, then there's some basic trust that is going on. And then you're able to talk about the problems that may affecting you in order to solve them, if that was the case.
Yeah, because you're opening yourself up, right? It's showing the vulnerability.
That's right. Yes.
To be, showing vulnerability. I agree. Like, would I tell this other person something that could, bite me later?
Yeah, bite me back. Yes. But that's the thing, when you're comfortable with yourself, you don't care too much about what other people will say or think about you. You're just being, authentic. And and you have to accept that some people will like you, some people won't like you. And then you have to wonder, does it matter? And
I can see how that equates to more energy, because that's the statistics we saw earlier. We have more energy when we have more trust in the workplace.
Yes.
Because we know from research, when we try to hold up our wall, going back to Samantha's example of, we have different ways of trust. But if I need to hold up my wall to make sure people don't get to know me, that is energy being, held up in the brain. And we know the brain uses up, I think, 20% of our body energy.
Yes.
So that energy is sucking so much attention away that I won't be able to focus on the workplace, and I do have less energy.
Yeah.
That's withholding authenticity. When you withhold authenticity of yourself, you're putting a cap on trust, and you basically are not able to lead self or others. When you're withholding from your child, from your spouse, from your teammate, from your boss, when you start withholding, that's the sign the relationship is crumbling.
That's correct.
I'm just looking at the chat here to see what's coming in from our audience.
Yes.
There's safe to fail and learn. So making mistakes you feel safe to do that. We have coined the term carefrontation. Oh, I like that, Maurice.
I love that. Yeah.
Carefrontation. Oh, I love it. If someone makes a mistake, they have your back. I think that's knowing I've got someone in the corner in my workplace that has got my back is a huge factor to feel safe and create that sense of safety.
Absolutely.
So great examples here. Good debates and discussions, sincere conversations. You feel you are able to bring your true self and real self to work. Exactly. Yeah. So we can see that.
Yeah. Although sometimes I have to say this, sometimes, when people say, I bring my whole self to work, I say, yes, but that doesn't give you an excuse to be rude, to be disrespectful, because frequently people confuse the two. Being authentic means being true to yourself, knowing yourself, being true to yourself, but also doesn't give you the carte blanche to go about and abuse people and say, well, this is my true self being at work. Do not bring that with you. Behave within the confines of societal norms.
Yes. I think that's a very, very important aspect to raise there.
Because
it just doesn't mean always speak your mind, but speak your mind in a diplomatic way.
Yes, but I had a leader who honestly verbally abused me. And they will say, well, that's just how I am, but I'm authentic. And I'm like, well, you may be authentic, but you are very hurtful. Is that how you want your brand to be? I am authentic and extremely hurtful to and, detrimental to other people's health.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, Birthe, I just want to add that sometimes people think that trust is something that will last forever. And I believe that trust is temporary, because otherwise there wouldn't be so many divorces. In a way, you love someone, you trust them until you don't trust them anymore. And then once trust is broken, it's very difficult to build it up again. Yeah. So I think that sometimes it's a bit overrated in the sense that we can't work if there's no trust. But we need to accept as well that people change, because the brain is continuously rewiring and people change. So you are not the same person you were last year or 5 years ago. Absolutely. And we all have the right to change, if you think about it, and build new trusting relationships. So it's such a complex topic, because as Patrick Lencioni, the author of The 5 Dysfunction of the Team, puts it, trust is at the bottom of this pyramid that you need to be able to build with your team in order to achieve the results. So no trust, it's hard to work together, because you can't deal with conflict properly, people don't take accountability, etc. But we also need to accept that sometimes trust changes face and it may leave us, and then we have to start again.
You're right, Silvia. You can build it up again. And in my time when I was working as counselor for people who were going through divorce, you can recover. Yes. It takes work, it takes time. But as Silvia says, brain is plastic. You're continuously changing. You're making new connections in your brain. You can definitely rebuild trust if that's what you want and you're prepared to put the work in.
Yeah, very true. And that's good, right? Because sometimes what they say in couple counseling, when you go through the tough times and you make it out together, you're actually stronger than before. And they say the same about teams, right? Going through the tough times and then surviving together is actually, we then have a shared and common experience, going to what Silvia said before, have something in common and know we've done it.
That's oxytocin at work. That's bonding.
That's the oxytocin. Yeah, it's beautiful.
And also, a trustworthy person doesn't mean that you are a perfect as a human. We all have imperfections. Sometimes we get tired of ourselves and we may drop the trust game, and I think that we need to be flexible and adaptable to how we operate and how other people operate. And if you become very rigid because you're not working out your brain and then you don't want to adapt to certain situations or certain changes, you are going to be more limited. You're going to become bitter because people let you down, for example.
But you cannot deal in absolutes as a human being.
No,
There is no such thing as absolutes. Nothing is ever black and white. We all operate within shades of gray on a spectrum. So behavior is on a spectrum. Trust is also on a spectrum. What trust means to me may not mean the same thing to Birthe or to Silvia. I would hope it does, and I know it does. But it's, for example, if you're having a narcissistic personality disorder, your trust will be skewed in a completely different way, and you will not see it the same way as a person who is neurotypical.
Yeah. I'd like to open the room now again to our audience because we're coming to the end of this session, and just want to see if there's more questions. So Q&A session, open to the room, and I know we can spend another hour on this. One question that came in beforehand in preparation of today was the question, there you go, where do I have it? It was the question, what frameworks are there? We mentioned some frameworks already today, but what research-based frameworks are there in order to build trust in teams?
For teams, are you asking the audience? You're asking me, because there is a framework that Harvard came up with, which is a triangle of trust. Yeah, it's very similar to the trust equation. It just talks about authenticity, empathy, and logic. So those are the 3 points of the triangle that they put.
Empathy, say that again.
So empathy, authenticity, and logic.
And logic.
This is particularly for workplace in leadership kind of situation. So logic is, telling to your team person, I know you can do it. I trust that you can do it. I back you up to do it. Your judgment is sound. Your authenticity is, I experience the real you. I'm connecting with the real you. And then your empathy is, I believe you care about me and my success, and I care about you and your success, kind of thing. Yeah. That's one framework, which I'm happy
similar, very similar to what we discussed already. Just looking at the chat box now to see if there's I know one question previously was, can leadership be learned? That was one question I saw in the meantime. Maybe Silvia, do you want to comment on that? Can leadership be learned?
Yes, definitely. I've been in this business for 25 years, a bit more actually, and I have seen people developing completely from not believing that they could be leaders to becoming really great leaders. And in some individuals, the brain is born in a way that is prepared to lead, but in most people really need to learn the skills of leadership. So, and we can all do it. And one of the important aspects to consider is that the more you develop your own leadership or your personal leadership or self-leadership, the better you're prepared to tackle the challenges that we face in life. So leadership doesn't equate to being in a leadership position. You could be in a leadership position or not, but you can still develop the leadership, skills you need.
Absolutely. It's teachable. You just need to do it. Andrew here put another question, which I find interesting as well. Do you feel these topics are at the heart of the well-being and burnout headline? We know that over 60% of people are feeling stressed at work right now. What has changed? Has lack of trust increased?
To what we were discussing at the beginning, being at home limits the interactions we have with people. So less opportunity to collaborate, to feel that we belong, and to have truthful conversations. So it has benefits, but it also has disadvantages. And most managers are now struggling to entice people to come back to the workplace, and people prefer their own well-being than trust and collaboration. But the reality is, like, if you work for an organization and you want to innovate and you want to feel part of a team, you need to spend some hours with your team members. That's the truth.
That is actually a great segue. Thank you very much, Silvia. We're coming to the end of today's session, and I'd like to share some call to actions. You can see that all three of us love talking. All three of us have a huge passion for helping leaders, for helping teams and individuals to be the best version of themselves. And if I was to put a hat on, it's like I'm definitely more on the team side. I think Sam is doing great in executive coaching. I know you do a lot of coaching, and of course all the rest as well. And Silvia, you have great programs for leaders. And in fact, going over to you, one of the programs that you're starting in August.
Yes.
And we're going to share a link in the chat box right now to get more information about this program. But can you tell us a little bit about it?
I'm doing it, Lisa.
Yes, thank you. The program is about, understanding the neurobiology behind the coaching process. So this is directed to coaches, consultants, people in leadership positions that want to learn about coaching a bit more, but just from the perspective of how our biology works, how our brain, our heart, our gut works in unison in order to become the best version of the coach you can be for other people. I think that we are leaving behind an era where we used to share with people how they can change their behavior or improve their self-awareness. There is much more to this, and we need to go into the science, because there are so many interesting things that are backing all this process up. And we can't just say to people, you have to listen better if you want to be a good coach. We have to understand what affects our listening, for example, stress, and why, if we are in that position, we need to apply certain strategies to change that. So the program has amazing faculty, it's very comprehensive, and we will go into, how to become a more intuitive coach, more imaginative, better integrated, and it's also inspirational, because people need inspiration in this era.
Yeah. It sounds fantastic. I might join you as well. So I'm just going over on my end. I will also share something in the chat box for our audience that is here live. It's actually it's our flagship program, the TeamTalks program, but I'm offering an end of financial year sale here in Australia. End of financial year is end of June, and I just released it today. So you guys are the first one, and there is up to 20% discount for quick decision makers. So I hope in the chat box you should be able to see a link to sign up and find out more information about this. So what TeamTalks does is basically helping teams to build a ritual of connection as a monthly repetition. So it's a monthly framework, and I help teams and leaders to get on the horse for 2 months, to know what's going on, get the buy-in, get people excited, because we know the hardest is the beginning, right? And then moving on, I can help the leaders, or I can help with content. But the main thing is, let's get started. 2 months connection bootcamp. So that's it from my side.
Beautiful.
And I like to end today's session with a quick fire question to Silvia and Samantha.
Yeah.
So you just have to answer. What's your favorite? Dog or cat, Silvia?
I have both, and it's difficult to choose. I love both. I'm not neither a cat or a dog person.
Same with me. I have both, and I love both. It doesn't,
Animals
don't make a distinction. They're gorgeous, both of them.
Yes, they are.
One more question. Dance floor or karaoke?
Karaoke.
Dance floor.
Dance floor.
Salsa.
Lovely.
Salsa.
I'm karaoke as well.
Yeah.
And as we are in Australia, barbecue or sushi?
Sushi.
Barbecue. Argentinian barbecue.
Argentina barbecue is the best, honestly.
Yes, it's very good.
That's beautiful. All
Wonderful.
right. Well, we're coming to the end of today's session. Here are contact details for all of us. And of course, you find us on LinkedIn. Thank you so much to
Wonderful.
Silvia and Samantha.
Thanks, Birthe.
You're most welcome.
Time flew
Thank
by.
you.
And thank you to the audience. And I can see there's a lot of dog people here as well. And thanks to the audience for your engagement, for dialing in today. I know time is precious these days. So stay well, stay healthy.
Thank you.
Thank you
and
very
take
much.
a deep breath.
Thank you, Birthe.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.